In the sunny city of California, Antonio drives a fancy GT and boasts about it to a fellow driver at the signal. Soon after, he parks it outside a hotel and quickly gets out of the driver's seat. The text on the back of his vest reveals that he is a valet as he opens the door for the real owner of the car. He returns the sunglasses he was wearing to his friend JV, who also works as a valet with him. Then, he bicycles his way past all the rich men screaming into their phones while sitting in their fancy cars. He also witnesses a lot of gentrification that's been happening recently in areas where people in his community live. An example of this is Vincent Royce and his daughter Catherine, who are tearing down businesses in their area to construct skyscrapers. Even though they claim to promise the local people jobs, everyone knows their real intent is to take over. What's sad is that Councilman Garcia is also letting all this happen. Antonio finally stops at his son Marco's high school because he's there to pick him up. Marco, a teenager, just walked out of drama class with a girl. This makes Antonio smile, and Marco automatically feels teased. Marco hops on the cycle with Antonio, and they reach their home. Antonio's mother also resides in that apartment, which has received multiple visits from the landlord Mr. Kim recently. On Antonio's pestering, his mother Cecilia reveals that Mr. Kim is her lover. Antonio is confused because none of them speak English, and they don't have a common language to communicate. This turns into disgust when he infers the nature of their bond. Olivia, a famous movie star, makes it out of her shoot with her assistant. She's wearing clothing to hide her identity and shoots down many commitments from magazines and Hollywood parties. She cautiously switches cars in a parking lot and covers herself up with a hoodie and cap to not be caught by the paps. She makes it to the inside of the Royce Hotel and fools the paparazzi successfully. There, she knocks on a door and gets welcomed inside the room by Vincent Royce himself. It turns out that they're having an affair. Antonio has his sister Clara and her family over for dinner at their house. They've tried to set him up with different women since his separation from Marco's mom Isabel. They're just up to their good old family fun when Antonio answers the door. Isabel stands on the other side, who just rushed there from Costco, where she works. She apologizes for coming early, explaining that they were overstaffed at work today. Antonio and Clara invite Isabel to stay for dinner, but she politely declines. She tells Marco to pack up his stuff, while Antonio senses that she looks stressed. She confides in him privately about how the bank rejected her loan. Now she'll have to take a year off from school because she's behind on some problems. Antonio's willingness to help her shows that he's interested in getting back together with her. But she's already dating a man named Ronnie, who is a realtor. Antonio doesn't take this news very well, but Marco has already come out by that time. So Antonio stays in deep thought while Marco and Isabel walk back to their home. On the other hand, Olivia and Vincent are cuddled up in bed right now. But Olivia's joy doesn't last long, as Vincent's phone keeps buzzing. It's obviously his wife Catherine, but Vincent doesn't really address that. He wants her to focus on the 2 more uninterrupted hours that they have together. But the phone buzzes again, and Olivia gets up this time. She can't handle all this and needs to get away. When she gets out of bed to gather her stuff, Vincent follows her, begging her to stay. As she gets dressed, Olivia expresses her dissent over the fact that the only person who knows about them is her assistant. What makes matters worse is that she's a role model to young girls who look up to her. She literally started a company dedicated to telling women's stories. Too bad that she can't tell her own story of how she sleeps around with another woman's husband. She feels terrible about all this secrecy, even though she loves him. Vincent reciprocates her love and blames the consequences for not working in their favor. He explains that he was about to leave Catherine, but then her mom passed away. This made her so depressed that Vincent is now holding back on his decision. But as soon as she gets back to normal, he'll come clean to her about everything. Olivia reminds him that it's been a year, and he remembered about their anniversary too. He comes bearing gifts, one of which is Bette Davis's original journal, from when she was shooting Now, Voyager. That was the movie that made Olivia fall in love with acting, and she really likes this thoughtful gesture. Yet, she bids him farewell with teary eyes and leaves the hotel room. Covered up again, she walks out of the hotel, with Vincent still in hot pursuit. The paparazzi outside the hotel are about to bail too. That's when Vincent begs Olivia to not leave out front, while Olivia tries to get in her Uber. One of the paparazzi gets alerted and moves closer. Weirdly, Antonio gets distracted by Ronnie the realtor's face on benches at the same time. He cycles right into Olivia's Uber and feels embarrassed for getting hit by a parked car. Olivia and her Uber driver Dave try to help Antonio out, but Vincent jumps in. He hands Dave a lot of money to keep his mouth shut. He also begs Olivia to go back inside, but she's worried about Antonio, who had a really bad fall. As Antonio gets up, one of the paparazzi takes pictures of Olivia, Vincent, and Antonio in the same frame. Olivia instructs Vincent to call her when he's divorced, and leaves in her Uber with Dave. Antonio comes home and gives the medicine he bought to Cecilia. As he sits by himself, he can't deny how lonely he feels. Olivia is going through a similar sentiment, sitting in her condo that night, When Antonio goes to the local bike shop to get his bicycle repaired, he jokes around with the owner Natalie and her daughter. They are soon going to be kicked out by Vincent, who is the developer taking out this whole block. She invites him to a city council meeting to stop this gentrification. After he leaves, it's pretty clear that she is crushing hard on him. Olivia is venting to her assistant, and now doubting her decision to stay away from Vincent until he gets divorced. Her assistant isn't interested in her personal life, and suggests she should talk to her mom about all this. Olivia points out that her mother is a drunk who embezzled from her. They even had a messy lawsuit that was highly publicized. But right now, the highest of Olivia's concerns is the paparazzi photo from last night that just got published. All the headlines are speculating about Vincent and Olivia's affair, but Vincent totally denies it in front of Catherine. Instead, he even refuses to have met Olivia at all. To save face in front of Catherine, he throws all the blame on Antonio. Vincent claims that the lover's spat mentioned in the articles was between Olivia and Antonio, and he had nothing to do with it. Catherine doesn't believe him one bit, but he sweet talks his way out of it. Meanwhile, Olivia is having a full-blown panic attack about the photo being released. This is because her new movie comes out in 5 days. This photo will totally ruin her reputation, and even her publicist isn't available at the moment. Her career depends on the performance of this movie, and she fears that people won't watch it because they'll judge her. Olivia's behavior has turned fully erratic at this point. Vincent is much different too as he paces in his office. He fears that Catherine will divorce him, and she and her father will force him out of their development company. He expects his lawyer Daniel to fix this, and is literally paying him to not be judged by him. This is an urgent matter which gives Daniel an unconventional idea. He proposes finding the other guy in the photo, and getting him and Olivia to pretend to be a couple. Vincent initially finds this idea idiotic, but Daniel plants its seeds into his mind and convinces him. Antonio is bringing a man's car over for him when his call gets connected to the car's Bluetooth. Coincidentally, the car owner is in the middle of having phone sex with his lady, so all her seduction is heard by Antonio, who quickly moves on to another car. But this time, the driver of the car sits right beside him in the passenger seat. It's Daniel, who has sought Antonio out. He lays down all the details to Antonio about how he gets to go out with Olivia and also gets paid. Antonio is sure that this is Benny playing a prank on him, but Daniel urges him to name his price. Daniel returns to Vincent with Antonio's price, which is precisely the amount Isabel needs to pay off her college. Now it's Vincent's job to convince Olivia. To his surprise, she's ready for this, because she needs to protect her career and reputation. Meanwhile, Catherine has also hired a private investigator to look into Antonio. Olivia drives to the hotel Antonio works at, while being followed by Catherine's investigator. That investigator is also being followed by Vincent's man Kapoor. Antonio's pals are judging his desirability when Olivia drives up to them. JV rushes to open her car gate for her, and she walks straight toward Antonio. She kisses him, and the world stops and stares at them. Everyone still hasn't recovered from this unusual sight when Olivia takes away her boyfriend Antonio for lunch. As soon as he's inside her car, Antonio notices how clean it is. He judges people by how they treat their cars. According to Olivia, it's her assistant who takes care of it. She just doesn't want him to feel obliged to make small talk with her, because he's already doing her a favor as is. They're all set, as her publicist has tipped off the paparazzi. This makes Antonio nervous, because he doesn't like to get his photos taken. He'll need to get lunch with Olivia, who is half his age and much superior. He doubts that anyone would ever believe that they're dating. Olivia screams at him to get his shit together, and they step out of the car together. They're immediately swarmed by paparazzi and Olivia's fans. Antonio gets greeted by a valet for the first time in his life. Olivia dodges questions about Vincent, and introduces Antonio as her boyfriend to everyone. Antonio gets tense with so many eyes on him constantly, but Olivia is giving everyone the show they want. When Olivia watches Antonio order, she understands that it's better for him to talk as little as possible. Otherwise, he could blow their cover. Antonio goes to wash his hands before their food arrives, and everyone mistakes him for the waiter. He plays along instead of correcting them, until Olivia rescues him. Antonio is concerned by how little Olivia eats, to fit into the dresses for her Hollywood events. He'll accompany her to the premiere of her new movie as her date. He is sure that his cousin Chucho can score him a good deal on a tuxedo rental. But Olivia insists that her team will sort out his outfit, and advises him to lose his mustache. When she drops him off at his workplace after lunch, his friends surround him, because he's famous now. Olivia finds out that her tactic is working, because a man from the hotel staff leaves his number for her, in case things don't work out with Antonio. When Isabel picks up Marco from school that day, they also discuss the news that has recently broken out. Isabel is shocked, and Marco is thrilled to have a famous actress as his potential stepmom. Along with everyone else, Catherine has also eaten up these stories. She calls Vincent and apologizes to him for her recent crazy behavior. But as soon as she hangs up on him, she talks to her private investigator, who is still tailing Olivia and Antonio. He confirms the story, but Catherine isn't that naive, and still searches for any lie that she can catch. With his mustache shaved off, Antonio is all dressed up for the movie premiere in his pricey tuxedo. He gets picked up in a limousine, where he can eat all the snacks he wants for free. As he drives through his neighborhood, with Spanish music playing in the car, he finds it much more beautiful than he did on his bicycle. Olivia gets her hair and makeup done for the event, but still feels empty inside. When he picks her up, she looks really beautiful. She doesn't accept his compliment properly though, because it took the efforts of 12 people to make her look this perfect. On their way to the event, she lies down on the seat to avoid any wrinkles on her dress. Antonio quietly snacks while she stays busy on the phone. She is on call with her publicist and anxious about the response to her movie. She even voices her publicist's concerns over the fact that Antonio might say something stupid. Antonio admits that he's very nervous. When Olivia sees the sweat stains on his shirt as indications of his anxiety, she puts her phone on loudspeaker. Her publicist instructs Antonio to only speak when necessary. Now Olivia is also apprehensive and pops a pill with her champagne to calm her nerves. They pull up at the event, and Antonio is blinded by the camera flashes on the red carpet. Olivia navigates him through posing and takes him inside. Meanwhile, Cecilia watches the event on TV with Mr. Kim and the kids from her family, filled with pride. Antonio doesn't know what to say when being interviewed with Olivia, so he just silently nods. But another famous Latino interviewer calls him over. Antonio recognizes him as Raul Gonzalez, because Cecilia watches his show regularly. When asked about his outfit, Antonio fails to give a satisfactory answer, so Olivia takes him inside the movie theater. Even there, he behaves like no other person, and grabs a ton of movie snacks for himself and Olivia. He gets totally engrossed during Olivia's monologue scene in the movie. But when he looks to his side, Olivia has sunk deep into her seat out of embarrassment about her performance. Once the movie is finished, Olivia and Antonio move on to the after party. Olivia's assistant orders her a giant pizza. Meanwhile, people speculate that Olivia is with Antonio because he must be good in bed. Although they only need to stay here for 20 minutes, Olivia loses her cool when she sees Vincent and Catherine at the party. Antonio has lost track of who they are and offers his futile attempts to help her as the Royces walk over to them. Catherine introduces herself and her husband to Olivia and compliments her recent empowering movie. She also addresses their relationship and inquires how Olivia met Antonio in the first place. Olivia makes up a story on the spot, and Antonio weakly supports her. Catherine is nowhere near stopping with her curious questions, but thankfully Olivia's assistant jumps to the rescue. She steals Olivia and Antonio away. On the other hand, Catherine's investigator and Kapoor bond, because they're old buddies. In reality, this is Kapoor's maneuver to plant a bug in his rival's car. Olivia is popping more pills in the ladies' room with her assistant when Vincent finds her. He apologizes for showing up there without warning and blames Catherine. Olivia feels worse after meeting Catherine and witnessing how wonderful she is. Antonio is again getting mistaken as a server when Catherine comes up to him. She offers to quadruple whatever Vincent is paying him, but he responds wisely. He finds Olivia drunk and carries her out the back door to his pal's truck. Olivia has passed out, and they all panic about what to do with her. They decide to drive to Antonio's house, but make a stop to get food. Antonio drags Olivia to his room after hearing Cecilia's warning about how thin the walls are in this house. He tucks Olivia in bed, who takes off her dress before sleeping. To Antonio's relief, she's wearing shapewear underneath. Antonio sits with Cecilia, who is glad that he's opening his heart to someone new after Isabel. She likes Isabel, but doesn't appreciate that she failed to see the good in Antonio. She wishes that Olivia was Mexican so that they could gossip together, but she'll do. Antonio brought back her favorite movie snack, which they share while watching TV together. When Olivia wakes up the next morning, Antonio immediately clarifies that nothing happened last night. She thanks him for taking care of her as she gets dressed. She calls her assistant over, while Antonio gets her coffee and some aspirin. Olivia washes her face and comes out of the room with Antonio, only to find a million Mexicans in the lounge. Apparently, Cecilia told Benny about Olivia spending the night, and the news spread from there. Antonio introduces Olivia to Clara and everyone else. They all sit Olivia down to feed her breakfast. Antonio warns Clara and Cecilia that she's very strict with her diet, so she might not take anything besides coffee. Even though she takes the first bite under obligation, she loves the food and the company, and thoroughly enjoys it. Marco comes over with Isabel because he forgot his maths book. Isabel is surprised to see Olivia inside, while Marco introduces himself to her. Isabel decides to wait in the car, which visibly ruins Antonio's mood. Olivia finds out about his situation and explains that this might work in his favor. She's right, because Antonio can see Isabel's jealousy soon afterward. Marco invites Olivia to his play before leaving, even though everyone knows that she can't come. It's time for Olivia to leave too, and Antonio and his family see her off. Catherine's investigator reports to her that Olivia did actually spend the night there, so she was wrong after all. This is a victory for Kapoor, who has been listening in on the whole conversation. Vincent has decided that he'll no longer do anything to put his career or marriage into jeopardy. Fate is working in his favor as he comes out of all this scot-free. But when Kapoor mentions that Olivia slept with Antonio, he orders Kapoor to keep an eye on Olivia at all times. He even commands Kapoor to hire another detective to follow Antonio too. So Kapoor hires Catherine's previous detective, who has now realized that he was played. More famous women even hotter than Olivia are hitting on Antonio now, even though he hasn't told anyone that he's done with Olivia. Olivia feels more lonely when she realizes that she has no one to share her success with. After reading positive reviews of her movie, only the leftovers Antonio's family packed for her bring her comfort. So she shows up at Marco's play and sits with Antonio. This makes Isabel even more jealous, even though she's sitting with her boyfriend. The detectives also attend the play, since both of their targets are once again in the same place at the same time. After the play, Marco joins both Antonio and Isabel separately for a celebratory dinner. Clara asks what Olivia sees in Antonio. In response, Olivia compliments Antonio's authenticity, kindness, and decency, which doesn't go unnoticed by Isabel. Everyone gets up to dance when the music plays, except for Isabel. Antonio takes some time off from the dance floor and moves to the bar. There, he runs into Natalie, who updates him on how difficult it is to fight the developers. She leaves him with a kiss, which earns him even more respect in Benny's eyes. The detectives bond more in their car, parked outside the restaurant. Isabel corners Antonio and kisses him. She has ditched Ronnie and is willing to compete with Olivia for Antonio's affection. She runs back to Ronnie though, after hearing only some of the truth about Antonio's relation with Olivia. Marco walks his crush home while Benny offers Antonio a promotion. The night takes a better turn as Olivia and Antonio manage to get the detectives off their backs. Traveling on Antonio's bicycle, they have a fun night where no one recognizes or bothers Olivia. She doesn't want to be alone tonight, so she stays the night at Antonio's apartment again. They're getting spied on there too, so Olivia puts on a show, as if she's having a wild time with Antonio. That night, she confides in Antonio about many harsh realities of her life. The next morning, Kapoor tips the paparazzi to earn himself and his partner an off day. Antonio meets up with Isabel, who rejects him for good. She thought it over and found them to be very different, so they're getting a divorce now. Vincent sees Olivia's steamy videos with Antonio. When he comes home, Antonio is really hurt by how everyone ignores him and walks all over him. He has a fight with Olivia too, and criticizes her life choices. When they step out of his building, Antonio announces to the paparazzi that they've broken up. Olivia is deeply hurt and quietly leaves, taking the herd of photographers with her. Vincent locates Antonio and punches him in the face for sleeping with Olivia. He'll no longer pay him anything. Antonio tells his friends the truth about everything when Daniel approaches him. He hands him an amount greater than what was promised, because he wants to do the right thing. For once in his life, Antonio decides to accept the good coming his way, and takes the money. The detectives decide to be roommates while they're watching over Antonio's house. Their wholesome moment is interrupted by the heartbreaking sight of Cecilia collapsing due to a heart attack. Her funeral is a tearjerker for everyone present and watching. Now a partner in Benny's business, Antonio runs after Olivia to win her back. Vincent gets the end he deserves. Antonio dresses in Olivia's hoodie to serve him divorce papers from Catherine, and Olivia also breaks up with him. The women in his life have united now to get rid of the scum. Olivia apologizes to Catherine and learns that this wasn't the first transgression of Vincent's life. Catherine thanks Antonio for his help and asks if she can do anything to return the favor. He takes her up on the offer and gets the development project canceled. He sits with Mr. Kim, and they eat Cecilia's favorite snack while watching TV. The news on the TV shows Vincent getting arrested for his offshore deals. Antonio drops by Natalie's shop and finally gets the courage to ask her out. Things are going well, and he is dating her now. As for Olivia, she finally has a best friend in the form of Antonio. They meet up regularly for lunch at their favorite Mexican restaurant, to share all their sorrows and joys.